Hello and welcome to video 4 in this mini crash course on understanding the basics of sheet music notation. In this video, we'll be going through note rests, the beaming of notes, dotted, tied and slurred notes, articulation, dynamics and accidentals. So there's a lot in this video. So let's get started. Note rests. In our last video, we went through the different types of note durations. Now let's have a look at their rest equivalents. With each type of note duration comes its equivalent rest. Now a rest is an interval of silence where the musician does not play a note. A whole note rest is a rectangular bar attached to the second top line. A half note rest is a rectangular bar attached to the top of the middle line. A quarter note rest is a vertical wave. And an eighth note rest is a single dot added to a short slanted stem. And lastly, a 16th note rest is a double dot added to a short slanted stem. Now note rests have the same hierarchy as note durations. However, when using rests, you'll use the largest note rest you can fit into the space for the pause. So for example, if the note rest is equivalent to 1/8 note, you'll use 1/8 note rest, not 2 16th note rests. Now let's move on to the beaming of notes, which is also known as combining. 8th and 16th notes are special as they can connect to themselves but also to each other. So here we have 2 8th notes and 2 16th notes connected. Their note duration hasn't changed, they are still 2 individual notes. Now here they are joined together, 1/8 note and 2 16th notes. Now how they beam together depends on the time signature. So in time signature with the quarter note /4, you'll need to collect them to the value of 1 quarter note beat. In the time signature for a half note /2, you'll need to connect them to the value of 1 half note beat. So here we have an example in 4/4. Our first beat is 2 8th notes, our second beat is an 8th note joined to 2 16th notes, which equals a quarter note. Our third beat is a quarter note, and lastly, our fourth beat is 2 16th notes joined to an 8th note. These have been split into 4 individual beats, and each beat contains a total of 1 quarter note, because each beat is based on a quarter note when you're using the /4 time signature. So let's move on to dotted notes. On occasions where you need a note duration that doesn't exist, this is where dotted notes come in handy. Now a dotted note increases the note duration by an extra half of its original value. So for example, in 4/4, a quarter note is 2 beats. However, if you add a dot to it, it now becomes 3 beats. And a quarter note in 4/4 is 1 beat. Add a note, and it now becomes 1.5 beats. It adds 50% of its value. So here we have an example showing a half note on the G line with a dot. In 4/4, a half note has 2 beats, but with a dot it now has 3. Therefore you play the G note for 3 beats. So what if a note exceeds the bar, or what if I need to increase it to a duration more or less than half of its original value? So we answer them with ties. Now a tie connects the duration of notes together of the same pitch. This can be used on occasions where a dot is insufficient, such as if you wanted more or less than 50% of its original value. Here we have an example in 4/4. we have a note to last 2.5 beats. Now a half note will give us 2 beats. However, adding a dot will give us 3, which is too much. Therefore, what we have to do is tie a half beat note, which in 4/4 would be the 8th note, to the half note to give us 2.5 beats. Then to finish off the bar, we have an 8th note rest followed by a quarter note. It is also used on occasions where the note needs to exceed the bar completely. So here we have an example of 2 bars. Now as you can see, the last beat in the bar needs to be 2 beats long. Therefore it is tied to the first beat in the second bar. Well, this note lasted 2 beats. So what about connecting notes of different pitches? Well, we do this by adding an articulation. An articulation affects how a note is played or performed by a musician. Now our first example is a slur. Now a slur, also known as legato, look identical to ties in music, however their purpose is completely different. Similar to a tie, a slur connects the duration of the notes, but the difference is that it connects notes of a different pitch. Therefore, you smoothly transition to different pitches without pausing, and this act is known as legato. So here we have an example of a half note in the A space, and it is connected to an 8th note in the B line. The transition between these notes would be smooth. A slur can connect as many pitches as you like and can connect notes in consecutive bars. So now let's move on and explore other ways we can articulate our notes, which will focus on the 3 most well-known and most used types of articulation other than slurs. These are staccato, accent, and marcato, or marcato, depending on how you want to pronounce it. So first is staccato. It is shown by adding a small dot above or below the head of the note, depending on where it's positioned on the staff. A staccato articulation means that the note is short and detached. Think of it like a sudden burst. Accent. The second type is an accent note. It is shown by adding the greater than symbol above or below the head of the note, depending on where it's positioned on the staff. An accent articulation means that the note is to be played louder and harder. Now marcato is a third type of articulation. It is shown by adding the caret symbol above or below the head of the note, depending on where it's positioned on the staff. A marcato articulation is a combination of staccato and an accent, meaning the note is to be played loud, short, and detached. Think of this as a shocking, sharp sound. Now next we move on to dynamics. Adding dynamics to your music can impact your listeners in a variety of ways. This can range from soft and gentle to being loud and aggressive, and it allows the listener to understand the emotion and the stress behind the movement of notes that's being played. The 6 main dynamic notations to learn are pianissimo, piano, mezzo piano, mezzo forte, forte, and fortissimo. Let's learn about what each one means. The first one is pianissimo, so difficult to pronounce. This means that you play the notes very softly, and it's labelled as PP on your sheet music. The second is piano. This means you play the notes softly, labelled as P. The third is mezzo piano. This means you play the notes moderately soft, labelled as MP on your sheet music. And the fourth is mezzo forte. This means you play the notes moderately loud, labelled as MF. The fifth is forte, which means you play the notes loudly, labelled as an F. And the last is fortissimo. This means you play the notes very loudly, labelled as FF. So how long do these dynamic notations apply? Does it apply just to the bar, to the end of a section, to the entire piece? Now, dynamic notation applies until you instruct the musician otherwise. So if the piece starts with a PP and no other dynamics are present, then you'll perform the entire piece very softly. So next we have accidentals, which will be the last section we'll cover on notation that directly affects the notes being played. So an accidental modifies the existing note from a key signature by raising or lowering it by 1/2 step, a semitone. The three symbols that are placed to the left of these notes are the sharp, the flat, or the natural symbol. Now a sharp symbol raises the note it's attached to by 1 semitone, and the natural symbol returns the note or restores it to its original state, and the flat symbol lowers the note it's attached to by 1 semitone. Now when you place an accidental next to a note, all consecutive notes of the same pitch in that bar are to be played in the same way. So let's look at the top example. Our key signature is C major with no flats or sharp. Now our fifth note in the bar has a sharp symbol in front of it, which means the A is to be played as an A sharp. Now accidentals apply to all consecutive notes of the same pitch in that bar. Therefore, our last note in the bar will also be played as an A sharp. However, if you wanted to restore the last note to be its original A from the key signature, we would put a natural symbol next to the last A note, which means the note is restored to its original pitch. Now that completes this video in this mini crash course on sheet music notation. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful, and if you did, please give me a beautiful thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and any questions, leave them in the comment section below. And when you're ready, click on the next video in the series where we learn how to navigate through your sheet music.